Alright guys, Fula coming to you with another video. I hope all is well with y'all. Disclaimer about this video. This is no disrespect to any particular group. This is no disrespect to like the actions or the character of any particular group, but I just am just giving a historical perspective based on my reading and based on the clubhouse discussion that I was a part of that happened yesterday. So, you know, today is a very significant day in the annals of African history. This day has been singled out to commemorate and remember the martyrs which fought the 30-year struggle for the sovereignty of Eritrea. Now, the thing is that, you know, people will say like, oh, you only know about Eritrea because of, you know, the late great Nipsey Hussle, but that is not the truth. Before Nipsey Hussle, there was my Loke, Sandman the Goose, who came from Eritrea. There were many other interactions in which I had with Eritreans. You know, it was just like a natural cohesion that we had when I ran across them, be it at a liquor store, be it, you know, in a mosque or something like that. I just never took the time out to learn about their country, because at first I didn't even know their country went through a civil war. I was not aware of that. I was aware that there was tensions among, you know, them and, you know, Ethiopia and stuff like that. I was aware of that, but I wasn't aware of the extent of the civil war in which they went through until I started reading. And I read about, so far I've read about like maybe 4 books on this topic, and I ordered a 5th book, you know, because I believe clearly that in order for me to be correct, I have to have the right research. But from the books I've read, you know, and again, their struggle resonates with my dad's struggle. You know, my dad having to fight the Portuguese in Portuguese Guinea and Cabo Verde, you know. But also it just resonates from what they had to go through and the little that they had in order to carry out what it is that they needed to carry out, and also the obstacles in which they had to go through in order to carry it out, which I will talk about in this video. And again, I say as a disclaimer, I'm not trying to insult any group. I'm just speaking from a historical perspective. Now, the reason why I'm commemorating these martyrs is, number one, I read the book and I'm like, dang, them niggas did that for freedom? Them niggas had to do that? And I just shook my head like, oh my God, like, wow, these people really had to do a lot. One of the things was drink piss. Okay, they had to drink piss sometimes because they were traveling, and you know, it's just there was a shortage of water, so they had no choice but they had to drink their own urine. Okay, another thing that they had to do, which I was like shocked, was they had to endure sleeping in places where there are poisonous animals, where there is a high probability they can get bit by a snake, high probability they can get stung by a scorpion, high probability of these kind of things. One of the fighters who wrote a book in which I read, he had an allergic reaction. That allergic reaction was so bad that he had to take heavy medication to sleep. Okay, he had to like really it was just so bad. It just like irritated him to a point where he just couldn't take it. Okay, that's how bad the irritation was for him. Okay, this among other things that they had to go through in this struggle. Okay, the significant thing about the struggle is also how it kind of like grew and how it evolved. Like at first, it was kind of like, I guess you can say, a far left Marxist Leninist type thing. Then it got its own flavor, while still kind of using Marxist Leninist, but it just eventually like grew into something that was just completely organic. You know what I mean? Another thing that's significant about it is that, a lot of times, what people will do is they will try to pigeonhole like Islam into like basically a religion that is just, it's soft, people are soft and stuff like that. When in reality, the Muslims were among the first ones to have the idea of, struggling for sovereignty. As a matter of fact, the first one who shot the bullet was Idris. His name was, I think, Idris Awate, Rahmatullah alayh. And the thing is about it, which is more significant, is that because they wanted sovereignty and because they wanted their freedom, they were able to work together despite different beliefs. There was never, oh, mine's is right, yours is wrong. There was never none of that. So you have Christian and Muslims side by side, okay? Learning one another, becoming acquainted with each other's customs, sharing meals together, okay? Really nation building, okay? This was another good thing. Now, the question that I have is, in none of my research in the books has revealed this, because the two biggest groups in Eritrea are the Tigray and the Tigrinya, and I'm curious to know if any of the smaller groups took part in the armed struggle, like, for example, the Kunama, the Rashida, the Beja, that's what I'm curious to know, if like the Beja were ever cadres in the struggle, because they never talk about these groups, so that's why I was just curious to know if they took part in the struggle or not. But anyhow, I will say that also the significant thing about the struggle, this is the one thing that is really blowing my mind, and this is the sad thing about it, how friends can become enemies like quickly. And it's sad, but guess what? They still overcame. Okay? They still overcame these obstacles. So at the beginning of the struggle, when the ELF was the thing that was mobilized to struggle, they had training. They had training in Cuba. They had training in China. And I believe there was some training in Gulf Arab states as well. I'm not, or some training in like Iraq and Syria. I'm not quite sure for sure, but I believe yes, some trained in Iraq and Syria for the struggle, right? Because nobody else would help them, so they had no choice but to train there. But best believe that there was different options, they probably would have took those options. Because the history of Arabs and Africans, unfortunately, I'm going to be real, it's not really cohesive. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it isn't, due to the racist tendencies of Arabs, you know what I mean? So, once the struggle got underway more and more, you had, unfortunately, you had these people turn their back on them. You had, even at the beginning, I believe Yemen helped too. But it's sad because once the struggle got really intense, and once it was let's just say 5 years in the struggle, and even more years into the struggle, not only did the Eritreans have to fight against the Ethiopians, okay? They had to fight against the Ethiopian army backed by Israel, backed by the United States, backed by Yemen, backed by Cuba, backed by Libya, backed by North Korea, backed by Russia, okay? But yet they still won. And they didn't have that kind of backing. They didn't have those machines behind them. But somehow, they won. And you know what I believe it was? I believe it was Allah that saw them through. I believe that it goes back to, no matter how many people there are against you, if Allah doesn't will for them to be victorious, they will not be victorious. Okay? And no matter how little that you have with you, if God means for you to be victorious, He's going to make you victorious. And that's exactly what happened. Okay? Imagine going against a regime, and this is the Ethiopian regime, that became, I guess you can say, far left because there was a coup d'etat. But what I will say about the regime is, and this is bad, and again, I'm just saying this out of historical context. I'm not saying it trying to drag anybody. But when you read the stories and the accounts of some of these, what the Ethiopians did to the Eritreans is horrible. There was one guy who got tortured so badly, and they actually tortured his genitals. They actually shocked his genitals. That's what they did. And when it comes to the women, what they did with the women, unfortunately, rape was commonplace, but, they took it a step further. They took it a step way further, and they would cut off the breast of women. After they raped them, they cut off their breast. And I was just shaking my head about this, Can you imagine? And then on top of that, right? This is how the moral, upright character of the EPLF was. When they captured Ethiopians, they could have easily retaliated and did the same thing, but they didn't. They treated their prisoners as what they are, prisoners of war. They did not do the same things as their enemies, right? And then another thing too, here's another thing I want to talk about. The United States knew that Ethiopia was carpet bombing Eritrea. The United States knew that, that they were doing these kind of things. The United States knew Israel was helping them do it, okay? The United States knew there were Yemeni fighter pilots who were flying these planes, dropping napalm on people who may not even have been part of the armed struggle or been on the front line. And that's one of the things why I have to commemorate the martyrs, because not only were there people who died in the front line, there were also civilians who died. And I watched the documentary, and I'm serious, it almost brought me to tears. It almost brought me to tears because there were two little kids, and the little kids were burnt by napalm. And one of the little kids said, are they going to bury us together? You know, are they going to hurry up and bury us because they were burnt? You know, and I'm like, dang, man. I was just like thinking like, wow, this is crazy, bro. This is crazy. And I was just shaking my head. But the crazy thing is with the EPLF tactics, it was more like, it's like boxing, hit and not get hit. So what the EPLF did was they would take materials, and the thing is they had underground bunkers in which they would convert those materials into things that they can use, right? So, you know, these bombings, the sad thing is the Western powers turned a blind eye to what was going on. Because here's the thing about Eritrea, it's so strategically located, okay? If imperialism wanted to use it for a military base, that's the thing. You know, it would try its best to do so. So that's why it was always a tug of war for it, you know, in overlooking the fact of what the people actually wanted. Okay? Now here's the thing. Here's where, you know, it gets a little bit tricky, and I'll probably offend some Rastafari, but it is what it is. You know, I have nothing against Rastafari. I get along with Rastas. But the thing is Haile Selassie was not what they make him out to be. That dude was a neo-imperialist, and he was a very bloodthirsty guy. And then the guy who came next, I think his name was Haile Mariam Mengistu or something. He just continued on that bloodthirsty drive. Thing is about Haile Selassie, sure, he fought Italy. You know, he did fight them. But he still annexed Eritrea to Italy. Okay, this could have all been avoided if Haile Selassie just said, okay, I'm going to just let y'all decide who I'm going to just let y'all figure out your fate yourself. Okay? But he didn't do that. It was first the Italians, and then it was the British. And I think it happened during World War II that it became a British thing. Because the British were already in East Africa anyway. At one time, British had control of Somalia. British had control of Sudan. And also, again, British had control of Eritrea. You know? So that's how that worked at that point in time. So, you know, with all this being said, the Eritrean people have had to overcome many odds, many obstacles to get their sovereignty. And they're still overcoming many obstacles. And this is something for another video. You know, this is definitely going to be something that I will talk about in another video, because I got more clarity of the situation than I had before, right? So, the thing is about the struggles that the Eritreans are going on today. It has to do with the simple fact that the United States and the Western powers do not want them to set an example which will push Africa forward. And the example in which will push Africa forward is we can do things ourselves as Africans. We need to be strategic partners when it comes to, you know, seeking out help from the Western countries or foreign countries, and that these Western countries can't come in as just conglomerates that eat everything up and eat our natural resources up while we're left with crumbs, and while we're left with people fighting each other for those crumbs. It can't work like that. So this is why, you know, there's a destabilization campaign against Eritrea in the form of this, in that whole region, It's not only just Eritrea, it's that whole region. It's Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea. It's just that whole region, basically. They're trying to destabilize because it's strategically located, okay? So, you know, what's going on right now is this TPRF or something, I think. TPLF, yeah, TPLF. And at one time, they kind of helped during the struggle a little bit. But again, you know, they had different motives. Their motives was not to have Eritrea sovereign, you know. There was different motives involved. So, you know, that's the thing that's going on right now with Eritrea. But anyhow, I want to bring one last point home, or two last points home. Eritrea had to deal with two big challenges in which it's still dealing with right now. Number one, it's harder to rebuild a country and build a country from scratch than it is to actually like start, you know, with a head start, you know, just start with, you know, because in essence right now, Eritrea is like at a handicap because it's starting from nothing, because that war ravaged everything. The war ravaged infrastructure. The war ravaged economy. The war ravaged everything, right? So this is the bigger challenge, is building the country, right? So while there probably is some things, like some bad things going on there, I don't really know what's going on in Eritrea as of right now. I have to get more information about people who, you know, paint this image of, you know, a mass exodus of refugees leaving, to make sure that they are Eritrean, because something tells me there's something else to that. You know, I've been doing research, and sometimes those refugees turn out to be like Ethiopian, you know, after all, you know, turn out to be Eritreans, you know. But anyhow, that's another video as well. But I want to talk about the issue of famine. You know, these people had to deal with a massive famine while still fighting for their freedom. Okay? And this is, you know, this was heavy, because there's something that Nipsey said in the song. I still remember what he said in the song. He said, you know, he said, when you don't eat, that affects your weight, and when you're hungry, that affects your brain. You know what I mean? So they had to like eat plants and all types of things to, you know, survive and do what they needed to do. And then another thing too is that they managed out of nowhere, out of the bush, to build literacy, to build new trades and things of that nature underground. So this is another reason why I really respect this struggle, because it really was a grassroots type struggle. Sure, they did have help, but it wasn't that much help. A lot of the help came from them, from the muscle, right? So that's something I can really appreciate. You know, salute to the martyrs. Salute to the family of the martyrs who are still walking this earth today. And I will do Al-Fatiha for those martyrs, because of the simple fact that this was a multi-religious, multicultural struggle. And it's something that, you know, weighed heavy on me after reading more and more. Inshallah, when things settle down, I do plan to fulfill my promise to Ermias and Sador and visit the country, you know, inshallah, when things turn down. Because honestly, and I'm going to just leave it at this, you really have to go see things for yourself. You know, you can't really buy this brutal, vicious Western propaganda machine. I knew I had to go to Cuba by myself to see actually how it was. And it's not what they paint on Western TV. And I know it's going to be the same thing with Eritrea once I do go. It's going to be the same thing with Venezuela once I do go. Right? Because I'm a man on a mission, you know? That's the thing. I'm not going to talk too much. The demonstration would be better, so that's what I'm going to do. But yeah, I just wanted to commemorate the martyrs from their West African brother. And a note, too, is there's a group of Eritreans. They call them Takur, like what we call or Takrir, or something like that. And they're actually West African descendants who live, I think, in the west of the country. And I think what it was, I guess what happened was either A, they were on their way to Hajj and they just stayed there in Eritrea, or B, they were on their way back to Hajj and they just stayed there. Now, I'm not sure what groups they are from. I know Hausa is involved in that mix, but I also know that I don't know if Bornu, Banawis are there or not, but possibly there may be even some Fulas among that contingent of people. But, inshallah, Allah will give victory to Africa. I'm trying to look to see if there's any prophecy or anything like that about the whole what is going to be the fate of Africa. You know what I mean? I'm trying to ask people around, ask people who know this stuff more. But inshallah, it will get to a point where we'll flick our middle fingers at Europe, flick our middle fingers at America, and be in a position where we can say, we don't need you guys, you need us, and have them in a compromising position economically. Gaddafi tried to do it, but they took him out. We know how that ended, and now look at Libya. And speaking of Libya, and it seems like Allah has it out for people who actually helped the enemy of Eritrea. You look at Libya, that place is shambles now. You look at Yemen, that place is shambles. And these are some of the people that originally were helping Eritrea, but then they just turned their nose and went against them and joined the Ethiopian regime for some reason. But anyhow, man, I can go on and on about this, and I'm not going to go on and on about this, but salute to the martyrs. I've often said, if I were to be enlisted into a group of comrades, I would say that I would be a guerrilla fighter. I would never join the U.S. Marines. I would never join the U.S. Army. I would never join the Portuguese Army. I would never join the French Army. I would never join any of those imperialistic armies. I would always, if there was a guerrilla movement going on, then I would resonate to that. If there was something at stake for, my region, you feel me? But anyhow, man, that's all I got. If I said anything to offend anybody, it is what it is. I apologize, but I'm just giving the historical context, as I said before. But anyhow, man, Fula signing out. I hardly use this word. This is a very careful word. I'm very careful when I use this word. But when it comes to my Eritrean comrades and my brethren, I can say from the bottom of my heart, no corny stuff, I love y'all, okay? Deep inside, I do love y'all. And I'm not one to just throw this word around. You know what I mean? I love y'all. Fula signing out. Njada.